House of the Dragon, Episode 2, The Rogue Prince. In this episode, we're going to talk a lot about the Stepstones. And the Stepstones are these small islands within the Narrow Sea. So you have Westeros, and then you have Essos. The Narrow Sea runs in between them, and the Stepstones are these islands. What was happening is there was a lot of piracy. So three of the islands band together, creating something known as the Triarchy, and they were trying to put an end to the pirates that were attacking the ships within the Stepstones. Lord Corlys had told King Viserys about this way back in the beginning of the first episode. At the time, King Viserys didn't really see a problem with it because piracy is an issue, and if they were stopping it, then it seems like there was nothing to be concerned about. However, Lord Corlys, I guess, was looking at the long game and saw that if these three were going to bond together, there's a possibility that they could use their alliance against Westeros, which is essentially what's beginning to happen. The lead of this triarchy is somebody they're referring to as the Crabfeeder, because there's a lot of crabs on this island, and what they're doing is they are taking prisoners and nailing them down and letting them be eaten alive by the crabs. So now they started messing with Lord Corlys' ships. So he's pissed. He demands that King Viserys does something about this. Like, we need a show of force. We need to let them know that they can't do this because we see where this is going. The Hand of the King tells Lord Corlys to calm down, that they'll reimburse him for his ships, but it's bigger than that. King Viserys, he doesn't want to see a war between Westeros and the Free Cities. And this resistance is what's going to spearhead the tension and the rift between the two of them. Because Lord Corlys sees himself, and we'll learn this later when he's having a conversation with Daemon. I believe that he sees him and his people, who are Valyrian, as the equals and possibly superior to the Targaryens. They both hail from old Valyria. You can see it where they all have the similar look, the blonde hair, the platinum hair. And Lord Corlys, while I think he gets his position in the pecking order, I don't think he likes it. You know, he's married to Princess Rhaenera, so if she had been chosen as the queen of the realm, he would have been very close to the seat of power, but it didn't happen that way. And he references how the Targaryens, the only edge the Targaryens had over his people is that they had the dragons. So he's a little salty. And this saltiness is what I believe makes him challenge King Viserys and always kind of have this this rebellious or bitter point of view in his dealing with the crown. And it's going to play itself out in a big way later in the season. So while I have the map up, let's just take another look. If you're familiar with Game of Thrones, a lot of these places will be familiar to you. You may have heard of them before. Two places I want to bring to your attention because they're mentioned often. So we have King's Landing, which is where most of the story is happening. This is where the king and his family reside. And then you'll see off to the right in the little north is Dragonstone, and that's the ancestral home of the Targaryens. And that's going to be the place where Daemon is going to set up shop later. So although it's been about 6 months since King Viserys has named her his heir, Rhaenyra is still a cupbearer. And we see her in a small council, and she's still being viewed as a little girl and as the king's daughter. And this is demonstrated when she says that they should send the dragon riders to the Stepstones to make a show of force. Now, Lord Corlys is happy to hear this because that's what he wants the king to do, but we can see by the reaction of everybody in the room that they're wondering why she's even talking. Why does she even have a voice? Although she's been named the next heir. While she presents a good idea, they pretty much dismiss her and send her off. So we found out that one of the king's guards had died due to old age or sickness, and so now they have to replace him because there's usually 7 of them. And they have, I guess, put out like what you would say like a job posting, and a couple of soldiers from all over the realm have come to put their bid in to be a member of the King's Guard. And they send Rhaenyra to to help with the selection process. Prince Viserys tells her, I'm sorry, King Viserys tells her that, one day these people will be protecting you, so it's a good idea for you to go and check them out, which she does. And when she gets there, she realizes that most of the candidates there don't have real battle experience. These are folks who have just like competed in tournaments, and they don't have hands-on experience. And clearly it matters because they'll be protecting the king. And she brings that up. Sir Criston Cole is there. He's one of the candidates, and we saw him at the tournament where he actually put Daemon on his ass. And so she knows he's a real soldier. So she has a little conversation. I think she has a little crush on him, the way she smiles at him, and, she's happy to see him. And it's also, and not only does she like him, and I think she's a little enamored with him, but he's also quite qualified because he actually has battle experience. Now, Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, his selection process is more based on relationships, who these people are in their relationship to the realm, who their families are. But Rhaenyra is right on the money about the fact that that's all well and good, but I need somebody who can actually protect my father. So she makes a unilateral decision and decides it's going to be Sir Criston Cole. Probably one of the first times that she asserts herself, and she makes a decision as the heir to the king. So it's really good to see her assert herself. And not only is she stepping into her role, but what she's saying actually makes sense. We see that she's a wise young woman. She listens. She's been paying attention. She's brave. And they'd probably be better suited to give her thoughts and her opinions more credence. But we know this is a very patriarchal society. And not only that, is she's also a young girl, so they're just simply not taking her seriously. But we see where she's starting to demand that she be heard and that her decisions be adhered to. So we see that Viserys, it's been 6 months since his wife has died, and he's being pressured to remarry, which was very common at that time. And it's also coupled with the fact that he doesn't have a male heir. Now, yes, he did name Rhaenyra to be his heir, but that was, I hate to say, kind of out of desperation. The preference would be for there to be a male heir. And so they're starting to get in his ear about, him needing to make some decisions. At the same time, we see that he's been spending a lot of time with Alicent. And we know that her father, the Hand of the King, Otto Hightower, had made a point of her putting her in the king's presence because he wants her to be the king's next bride. But it looks like they're actually having they have a real friendship. I mean, it seems a little weird. He's old enough to be her father, but I think the fact that she had lost her mother, she can relate to him. She can relate to how it feels and to the pain associated with that loss. And I believe that that's what she's leaning into. We know he's also very much into history, and she asks a lot of questions about that. And she provides a mature, objective, comfortable ear. And I was trying to figure out we know why she's there. We know her father set her up for it, and we know she wasn't comfortable with it at first, but it looks like she's growing comfortable because it seems like she just likes him, and she likes spending time with him. She knows what her father is doing, and I don't know if she is just trying to wrap her mind around it, seeing the writing on the wall and realizing that this is probably what's going to happen next. So let me get to know this man. Let me develop a relationship with him. So if we do become husband and wife, we have some type of foundation. Or if she has aspirations to be the queen, that's nothing to turn your nose up at, right? There's a lot of power that comes with that. I think it's also playing in the back of her mind because Rhaenyra is her best friend, how her friend might feel about this. Viserys even says to her, Rhaenyra doesn't know about our conversations or the time we spend together. He's like, I don't think she would understand. So I think that they both know that if his daughter knew, it would be a problem. But, there's so many different factors at play. She's listening to what her father said. She probably likes his company. He knows he has to get another wife. He also likes her company. It feels safe. So there's just so many things happening concurrently that I think is muddying the water. And I think they're just leaning into what feels good right now. I mean, there's moments where it feels like she's flirting with him, but I'm not really sure if that's what that is or if she's just flattering him because, at that time, well, I guess in all periods, all time periods, people did flatter royalty and they told them what they wanted to hear. And it could just be another version of that, or it could just be she genuinely is starting to grow and then develop feelings for him. I'm not sure. So there was a lot of tension at the last small council meeting in which Lord Corlys had pretty much demanded that King Viserys take this issue in the Stepstones seriously. They meet later that afternoon, it looks like, to make nice after the tension from that morning. I mean, Lord Corlys is not stupid. While he is a very proud man, and I think he is definitely envious or he feels like his people have been set aside, he recognizes that that is the king and he needs to stay on his good side. And he's been thinking, him and his wife, Princess Rhaenys, have been thinking like, well, how can this current situation work for us? And just like many other times where people leveraged their relationships and marriage and family to get close to the crown and to acquire some level of power, that's essentially what they're doing. They are telling the king that the kingdom, the realm is vulnerable right now. He has lost his wife. He only has a young girl who's been named as his heir. His brother, the presumptive heir, has gone rogue. And now we have this situation happening in the Stepstones. So if you add all this together, the realm is in a very vulnerable place. And his solution to that is that King Viserys marry he and Rhaenys' daughter, the Lady Laena. He tells King Viserys that this would signal the unification between the two houses of the old Valyria, his and the Targaryens. It would show power and it would be a signal of unity to the realm. Now, the challenge or the problem or the issue, I should say, is that Laena is all of 12 years old. Now, they mentioned that she's 12 years old, but she looked like she's about 7 or 8, which made it for a very creepy scene when King Viserys and she go for a walk. He gets it. What Lord Corlys and Princess Rhaenys are proposing makes sense in theory. But, number one, he doesn't want to get remarried. He's still mourning his wife. Number two, she's a baby. And there were a lot of men at that time who did not care. They did not have any hesitation with marrying, sleeping with, having children with very young girls. But, King Viserys seems like a man of honor. He seems like a good man. He doesn't want to do this, and it even comes up when he's having a conversation with her. And by the way, she's extremely well coached. The things that she says to him all sound like they're directly out of the mouth of her parents. She knows that she sees this as her duty and she seems to be all on board. Her mother did tell her that she would not have to bed him until she was 14, but it felt very creepy, which I guess it should because it is. And he doesn't want to do this, but he's vacillating because he knows he's in a very precarious situation and his duty is to the realm. He really needs to do any and everything he can to protect it. And if what Lord Corlys is saying is that it is vulnerable, he absolutely has to make a decision. And marrying her, uniting the houses, there'll be a high likelihood that they would be able to have several children because she's young and she's fertile, or she'll be fertile soon anyway. And he can have several sons, and it would solve a lot of the problems that he has. But again, the devil's in the details here. We see a really good scene between Rhaenyra and Rhaenys. Now, Rhaenyra knows what's going on. She knows that her father's being urged to remarry. She doesn't feel good about it for several reasons. Number one, her mother just died. She doesn't want her father just replacing her mother so easily and quickly. And she also knows that if he does remarry and he has a son, that's going to push her out of the line of succession. However, she is mature enough to know that these are the order of things. She has a conversation with Rhaenys, and Rhaenys, you'll remember, is the queen who never was. She was the one who was passed up to become queen in favor of King Viserys. She asked Rhaenyra how does she feel about it, and Rhaenyra gives her the politically correct answer and says, my father has a duty to remarry. And she's like, that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you, how do you feel about it? And Rhaenys is the best person to talk to her about this because it's happened to her. She knows exactly what Rhaenyra is feeling and what she's going through. And I'm not sure if she's just trying to make a connection with her or she's just trying to prepare her for what's going to happen next, which I think it's more of that, to give her a reality check of how all this stuff works. I mean, it could just be, her putting her up on some old lady game, right? Just letting her know that this is about to happen and maybe you should just kind of prepare yourself and just wrap your mind around it. Like, you will be bumped out of the line of succession, so accept it. And they have a little bit of a back and forth, where Rhaenyra takes shots at Rhaenys saying that, they all bent the knee to me and I will be the next in line. And, maybe they just didn't want you to be the queen of the realm. And then Rhaenys says, well, yeah, they bent the knee to you, but you're still, pouring them drinks. So they have a little bit of a banter. And obviously these two, it would be best served that they supported each other and that they were on the same page because they actually have a lot in common. And Rhaenys has, she has experience that could serve Rhaenyra in some fashion. And she makes a statement to her, which is absolutely true. She says that these men will let the realm burn before they allow a woman to ascend to the Iron Throne. And there it is. It seems like a little bit of a foreshadow. And it also is timely. I mean, we're seeing how things that are happening so far. I mean, we're only 2 episodes in, but already I'm seeing parallels between this and what's going on in our real world in 2022. The patriarchy of it all. Last week when King Viserys made the decision about his wife and which led to her death. I mean, anybody who's anybody can see the correlation between that and what's recently happened with Roe versus Wade. And I'm not making a political stand here. I'm just looking at, I'm comparing apples to apples. This was an instance where a man made a decision about a woman's body, which ultimately led to her death. And now we're seeing the situation in which she mentions how there are times when people will cut their nose off to spite their face. And the comparison for me is similar to what we saw in the last election, well, the previous election, in which Hillary was bypassed despite her qualifications. And a lot will say it has to do with the patriarchy and that folks would rather see this country fall into a state of us versus them than to put a woman at the head of the state. It's something that definitely stood out to me. I'll just say that. So anywho, let's see what's up with Daemon. Now, the last time we saw him, he had been banished from court because he had done something really inappropriate and his brother was done with him. So Viserys had told him to go back to his wife, and that's not what he did. And we know Daemon doesn't like his wife, and he has taken up camp. He has set up camp at Dragonstone, which is the home of the Targaryens. They get a message from him saying, well, I guess they first learn because one of the dragon's eggs had been stolen. It's tradition for the Targaryens to put a dragon egg in the cradle with their newborn child. So him stealing the egg definitely was making a statement. He also sends a note saying that he has, taken a second wife and that he's in Dragonstone and his wife is expecting and there's going to be a wedding and he's inviting his brother. And now we know he's doing all of this just to kind of, to get some attention and to get his brother worked up. This stands out to Rhaenyra because it's also making a statement to her. Now, by putting the dragon's egg in the cradle with his son, is implying that his son is going to be the future heir, which is implying that he's going to be the next king, and implying that Rhaenyra is going to be bumped out of the line of succession. So when she hears this, it definitely captures her attention. You know, the king is pissed. He's ready to go to Dragonstone and confront his brother, but Hightower tells him, you know, these matters are beneath you. Don't worry about it. I'll go. Get to Dragonstone, and they have a standoff on the bridge. Daemon has the egg. He's just talking a lot of crap. And, you know, Otto tells him that he needs to stand down. And it gets to a point where, you know, it looks like there's about to be a battle. And nobody wants this. It's not going to be, this is not going to be a win for anybody. Just in time, Rhaenyra shows up on her dragon. Now, against her father's best wishes and everybody else in the realm, she gets involved in this matter. And it's a really good thing that she did, because honestly, she's the only person who could have brought it to an end. Short of her intervening, there would have been a battle and there would have been bloodshed. She gets off of her dragon, she goes to her uncle, and, you know, she's talking to him in Old Valyria and basically tells him that you're going to have to kill me in order to take my spot. If you want to be reinstated as the heir, I'm going to have to die first. And if that's what you want to do, do it right now. Now, she knows this, saying that her uncle is not going to lay a hand on her. I think this is what makes their relationship so complex. I mean, they're in a situation where they kind of are vying for the same role, but they love each other. You know, he definitely loves his niece. We saw that in the last episode, and he would never hurt her, even though he's done what he's done so far. I mean, he obviously didn't expect her to show up. You know, he backs down, he throws her the egg, and the problem is resolved, at least for now. When her father finds out what she did, he's pissed, of course. You know, he tells her, you know, you're my only heir. So obviously, he loves his daughter, but he makes a really good point. She is his only heir. If something happened to her while she was there or on her way or whatever, I mean, they would be in a really bad situation. I think the light bulb went off for him. I really have to do this, because the realm is actually vulnerable. I mean, it's questions of whether or not they would have ever followed her truly, but at least she was named. And if she dies, there's nothing, and there will almost undoubtedly be some type of a civil war. I mean, later they have a really good father-daughter talk. There had been some tension between them since her mother died. We know that, you know, on some level she blamed him for her mother's death. And, you know, they hadn't really been talking. And he had referenced this in his conversations with Alicent, in which she urged him to talk to his daughter. And so they have a moment where they talk. And Rhaenyra tells him that, you know, basically gives him her blessing, understanding that this is what he needs to do. And he needed to hear that. I believe because he loves his daughter so much, her giving him the thumbs up or the green light makes it easier for him to make this decision. He's still stressed about who he should marry. Now, he had gotten this, he'd received this offer or this proposal from Lord Corlys and Princess Rhaenys to marry their daughter, but he doesn't feel comfortable with that. He speaks to one of his advisors because he's really at a loss of what to do. And they tell him that, you know, yeah, you definitely got to get remarried. It is a good match with her. And just being honest, you don't want to make an enemy out of him. Driftmark is a powerful and strong house within the realm. And Lord Corlys is the admiral of the kingdom's fleet. And it would make sense to keep him happy and to throw him a bone. Viserys lets his counselor know that, you know, he's been aware since day one that Lord Corlys has been hating on him. You know, he knew from the very day that he was selected to be the old king's heir that Lord Corlys was tight. And he knows that their relationship is precarious. And while he is the king and he can assert his role and his power, he's smart enough politically to know that it doesn't make sense, or it wouldn't be smart to anger certain people, and that Driftmark would be a much better ally than an enemy. And his advisor tells him that he should marry Lady Laena. The next day he makes a decision. All of the folks are there in the small council. Rhaenyra and her father have had a conversation, so she's prepared for what he's about to announce. Lord Corlys believes that his proposal will be accepted. However, he throws a monkey wrench in all of their plans because he announces that he's actually plans to marry Lady Alicent. Now, Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, is obviously thrilled. That's his daughter. It just elevates his level of power and status. Rhaenyra is hurt. She didn't see this coming. She didn't even know that Alicent and her father were spending time and talking. She feels betrayed. It's her best friend. I mean, it absolutely makes sense. You know, she doesn't want her mother replaced in any way, shape, or fashion, but to know that it's her friend and to know that it feels like all of this was going on behind her back. I mean, she's betrayed it, and you can absolutely understand why. And Lord Corlys is pissed. You know, we already know he was already sitting already anyway, and you know this was, and he was expecting that this was going to go in his favor, but it doesn't. And I believe that this is probably the final straw for him. And in the next scene, we see that he is trying to bring Daemon to his side. You know, it's that whole philosophy of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. He's called Daemon to meet him at Driftmark. He wants the two of them to align against the king. Now, Daemon is he's an interesting character because we saw it with him and his niece, where he's impetuous and he is reckless, but I absolutely believe that he loves his brother. I believe he loves and he respects his brother, and I don't believe he wants to hurt him. So when Lord Corlys comes to him, we see the skepticism all through his face. You know, when Lord Corlys suggests that the two of them are cut from the same cloth, Daemon is quick to say, well, are we both brothers to a king? And when Lord Corlys also takes some jabs at Viserys, Daemon lets him know, I can talk about my brother, but you can't. So we see that the loyalty is there. And he is not somebody who is flighty or is just going to jump into an alliance with Lord Corlys without thinking this through. Now, granted, he is pissed at his brother. He does have an axe to grind, but his allegiance is to his family, I believe. So even if they do become bedfellows, I think there's a limit to how far he'll go because ultimately he doesn't want anything bad to happen to his family. So that was the episode. Has definitely drawn some lines in the sand. We see that probably Rhaenyra and Alicent will never be friends again. We see that Lord Corlys has made it known where he stands and he's considering the king an enemy to some level. We know that Daemon is thinking about his next move, whether it is with Lord Corlys or not. He's definitely, the wheels are churning because he's trying to figure out like how does he assert himself. We see that Rhaenyra is probably thinking of her position and what this new marriage and children are going to mean for her and what she should be doing. So this was a pretty good episode to set the wheels in motion for all of the dissension and infighting that is going to occur throughout the season. So let me know what you thought. Let's talk about it in the comments, and I will be back next week to review episode 3. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Bye.